there's different models of therapy in psychology. A lot of people are familiar with the traditional model, Sigmund Freud's model.
Yes.
And oftentimes what that does is it takes people into their past. And you spend sometimes years. I mean, I know people who've been in therapy for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And what they're doing is they keep reliving their past. They keep rewiring those neural pathways. So they keep identifying with their past with the hopes of coming out of it. For some, it's effective. For me, it wasn't when I was in that type of therapy. And then I began to learn that the brain is a muscle. And that muscle is based on our subconscious program. So this is what we begin to believe about ourselves, about the world, and how we think people perceive us. And that belief affects our thoughts, our perception, which affects the way we feel. And how we feel affects how we show up, whether we perform well, whether we procrastinate and don't perform at all, etc., which dictates our outcomes, right? So where we are in life is really based upon that subconscious program. And so now we know that the mind is a muscle, we can change the muscle. We can change the program, have different thoughts, create different feelings, show up differently, get different results. And before you know it, it's like all this time I identified with this, but that's all I knew. And because that's all I knew, it was very simple for me to identify with it. But once I get clear of what I want out of my life, I can begin to change. I can change that program so I can think different, feel different, show up different, and see myself getting a lot different results.
You know, my favorite book that I read, and I'm very glad that I read this very early on, was Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. And just being able to understand that, like, you know, how do you find the true self and the different versions of self? It really gives you the freedom to start playing with your neuropathy and changing your neural pathways and understanding that when you try something new, it takes time to build this as a new pathway where this is what it used to go. So it's like a groove and the water's used to going through there. So now you're building a new groove and you have to wait until this one is the one that's being used more.
That's right.
And I feel that a lot of people, they think that when they go down these paths, they get this like negative back talk that's telling them like, hey, you're losing yourself, you're changing, you're because it's hard, painful, stressful, difficult, whatever it is. But ultimately, you kind of have to operate using your entire self, all the versions of yourself. In my opinion, the smallest, most micro to the biggest macro. So this is sort of like your GPS looking at the whole map, and then this is your little soldier going through and foraging that path, right? And I feel if you don't have both of those views, every time that you hit some sort of hard obstacle, you're going to tell yourself, well, this isn't really me. You know, I'm losing myself. Why would I want to change?
I mean, that's great the way you just described it, and I agree with it. The mind does live in the past, and the mind does live in the future. And so if what our subconscious program is affecting the way I see myself, well, oh, say, can you?
See.
So we didn't get into this interview and say we're going to start singing the Star-Spangled Banner, right? Something came up that triggered you to say, see, right? So we could be making that progress, and before you know it, it's like we're triggered, maybe by this, it could be by a person, by a smell, by a situation, and before you know it, like all of a sudden we're singing Star-Spangled Banner, or all of a sudden we're going back to an old way of thinking, and that old way of thinking, it's uncomfortable with where we are, so there's a protective mechanism, the amygdala, that's putting us in fight or flight, and now we're like, what the hell am I doing here? And we begin to freeze or we run. And so once we understand this amazing system that we have and how to work it, not only are we able to shift from whatever state we were in or identity or way of seeing ourselves that we had, but we're able to grow into the new one, the one that we really want, the optimal version. And then we know what's going on that journey. Okay, so this is happening because, cool, I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to back out. It's literally okay and normal that this is happening. And with the tools that keep going forward, that actually becomes something that propels you as opposed to stopping you.